The room fell silent the moment Victor Hargreave entered, not because anyone announced him, not because he demanded attention, but because money has a way of bending air itself, and Victor Hargreave was the kind of man whose wealth arrived before he did, whose reputation made forks pause mid-air and conversations shrink into whispers, a man who owned half the skyline outside the restaurant windows and all the confidence inside it. And as he adjusted his cufflinks and scanned the private dining room like a king surveying land he already possessed, no one dared meet his eyes for more than a second, not the investors hoping for his approval, not the politicians laughing too loudly at jokes they didn't understand, not even the restaurant manager sweating through his tailored suit, because everyone in that room knew the unspoken rule: you do not contradict Victor Hargreave, you do not correct him, you do not challenge him, you smile, you nod, and you thank him for whatever crumbs of opportunity he throws your way. And for years, that rule had never been broken, until tonight, until a waitress named Lena stepped into the room carrying a tray she could barely afford to drop, because one mistake could cost her the job she desperately needed, a job she took not for dreams or ambition but survival, for rent due in 4 days, for a mother whose medical bills stacked higher than hope. And as Lena moved silently between the tables, her eyes down, her shoulders tense, she felt the weight of the room pressing on her chest. She had served powerful people before, but never someone like Victor, whose presence felt cold and sharp, like standing too close to something expensive and fragile that could shatter your life if you breathed wrong. And as she approached his table, Victor barely glanced at her, snapping his fingers once, not even looking up. Sparkling water. Now, he said, as if time itself existed solely to serve him, and Lena nodded quickly, already turning to leave when she heard him scoff, muttering just loud enough for the table to hear, "This place used to have competent staff." Laughter followed, forced and hollow, and something inside Lena tightened, not anger yet, but a familiar ache, the ache of being invisible, of being talked about like furniture. And she told herself to let it go, because that's what people like her always did. They swallowed words, they lowered their heads, they survived. But as the night went on, Victor grew louder, crueler, more comfortable in his dominance, criticizing the food, the service, the decor, even mocking one of his own junior partners for suggesting a minor change in a deal. "If you had even half my instincts, you wouldn't be sitting at this table," he said, smiling as the man flushed red. And no one defended him. No one ever did, and Lena watched all of it from the edges of the room. Something boiling quietly beneath her calm exterior, because she recognized that look on the junior partner's face. She had worn it herself too many times, the look of someone shrinking to fit a space they were never allowed to occupy. And when Victor waved her over again, this time irritated, tapping the table with his ring, "I asked for water 10 minutes ago," he said sharply, and Lena felt something snap, not loudly, not dramatically, but like a thread pulled too tight for too long, because she had delivered the water. She had set it down exactly where he asked, untouched because he'd been too busy humiliating someone else to notice, and before she could stop herself, before fear could wrap its hands around her throat, she said calmly, clearly, "Sir, it's right in front of you," and the effect was immediate, like glass shattering in slow motion. Every head turned, forks froze, the room inhaled as one, because a waitress had just corrected Victor Hargreave, and for a split second, even Lena thought she'd imagined it, thought the words had stayed inside her head, but they hadn't. They hung there between them, undeniable, irreversible, and Victor slowly looked up, really looked at her for the first time, his eyes narrowing, scanning her like an object he was deciding whether to discard or crush. And the manager took a step forward, pale, ready to apologize on her behalf, ready to sacrifice her job to protect the illusion of peace. But Victor raised a hand, stopping him, a thin smile curling on his lips. "Excuse me," he said softly, dangerously, and Lena's heart hammered, her hands shaking just slightly, but she stood her ground, because something inside her knew that if she backed down now, she would lose more than a job, she would lose herself. And she repeated, just as calmly, "The water, sir." "It's been there," and the silence stretched, thick and heavy, until Victor laughed, a short, humorless sound. "You think you can talk to me like that?" he asked, leaning back in his chair, testing her, and Lena surprised herself by answering, "I think everyone deserves to be spoken to with respect," and gasps rippled through the room, because this wasn't just talking back, this was defiance, and Victor's smile vanished, replaced by something colder. Calculating, "Do you know who I am?" he asked. And Lena nodded. "Yes," she said, "that doesn't change what I said," and for the first time that night, Victor was truly unsettled, because money had always been his shield, his weapon, his answer to everything, but it wasn't working on her, not the way it always did, and as the tension hung thick in the air, Victor leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You'll regret this," he said, and Lena met his gaze, fear burning in her chest but resolve burning brighter. "Maybe," she replied, "but at least I'll regret it for standing up," and the room remained frozen, no applause, no cheers, just raw disbelief, because no one had ever done this before, no one had ever dared, and as Victor stared at her, something shifted, not just in him, but in everyone watching, a crack forming in a rule they'd all believed unbreakable, and as Lena walked away, her legs weak, her future uncertain, she had no idea that this moment, this single act of courage, would change her life forever. And if you're feeling that tension right now, that rush of standing up when everything tells you to stay quiet, then make sure you subscribe to this channel, because stories like this don't just entertain, they remind you who you can be when it matters most.